want my brother Cleve, my little brother, if he'd come up here and share with you his testimony. Let's give this man a applause as he comes tonight. Come on, Cleve. I told you he's a little man.
I don't know what to do with this thing. I never need one of these. I can just kind of holler. Man, I made some notes. I tried to look at them a while ago. I don't know if I can read my own handwriting or not, but I'm going to try. Well, they can still hear me. I learned how to whisper in a sawmill. But, you know, well, give me a stand.
Wait,
or
listen.
something.
You're on the internet.
Oh, I'm on the internet.
You're on the internet,
on that
okay.
World Wide Web?
Yeah, you're all over the
okay.
world.
How y'all doing?
So keep that close to your mouth.
Well, you gonna chastise me again? All right. Well, I told him, I said, you know, I played in front of, I think the most amount of people was probably 96,000 people, and on TV, millions, and I was more terrified to stand up here tonight than ever taking the field. So I guess we'll start at kind of the beginning. Is, you know, I talked to Pastor Russ, and I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you lost a job, or, you know, you got broke up with somebody and you're in high school, or, you know, you're leaving a car lot and you get halfway home and you realize, God, no, I just bought a new car. And that's kind of what Russ did to me, as we sat and talked, and I feel like it, after the fact, he's like, all right, I need your message. I need it out there. And he coerced me, and I guess God, through him, made me do that. And I got halfway back to the house, and I'm like, dadgum, he really got me to get up here next, or 2 Wednesdays from now, and do this. Are you kidding me? So this morning I thought of every illness, I almost jerked my truck into this bridge embankment, but I had my baby girl in the back, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. But I still ain't followed the first note yet. But anyway, let me look at these. Who wrote this? Yeah, I woke up with an eye infection. I had to take my contacts out, and I'm like, not today, Satan. But so anyway, I go back to, you know, I'm a large mammal, and you're wondering why this good-looking large mammal is standing in front of you tonight. Well, I'm going to tell you. And it starts with this baby girl, and that's the end of the story, so I'll go back to the beginning. The beginning is I grew up in a house that was, the patriarch was the greatest man of God I've ever known. Harold Moore Roberts, Bo Roberts. You know Bo is him and my brother Donnie's son, but that's who he's named after. And another man named Daryl Griggs. They were two of the greatest men, the greatest fathers, the greatest men of God you'd ever know. And that's what I know as far as back as I can remember. And these two men had no fear. We would pull up at four-way stop in Calhoun, Louisiana, or I guess that'd be Southwest Monroe, and they'd pull up, and no matter what it was, whether it was a drunk, a beggar, or anyone, and pull out he had that Old Testament in his front pocket, and he'd pull out and just start going. And that's what we grew up under. Well, in Thanksgiving of 1987, our world was changed, and shortly before then, Brother Darrell, who was his best friend and his first cousin, and we'll get to more on that later, but, you know, my father was taken out of nowhere, 41 years old, and here I am, 12 years old. I got my brother who's 19, my sister who's 20, and it left me just angered. It left me just pissed off. I'm like, you know what in the world? How in the world? And everybody, you know, that wanted to come up and say, oh, God wants to take the ones close to him first. Man, you know what? Bull crap. I ain't buying that. I sit there and I defied him, man. And at that time, you know, I'm me, and, you know, I was 12. I was like 6'8", 248. But no, you know, things started to happen, and it wasn't that my life spiraled out of control. That word, that nurturing, that parenting that got me to that point when he left, I never understood it until a few weeks ago, and again, I'll get back around to that, but I always knew right from wrong. Did I do it? Rarely. Sin is fun. Dude, I had a blast. I mean, hot dog. You know, I was All-State in 2 sports, All-American in 1 in high school, All-American in college, went to the NFL, played in the Super Bowl. I mean, lost by a yard, you know, and all these things. Nothing could ever satisfy. And I'm not here. I'm not a preacher, obviously. You know, I talked to a buddy of mine, Rooster Hamby, and Rooster's my cousin, and we were talking earlier, and he's like, Cleve, well, I'm going to pray over you that you don't cuss. And I said, well, that's a good start. And so, so I'm going to do my best, but, you know, God forgive me, which we know he will, hopefully. But, so, you know, I went through all those times and went through this life of doing what I'm doing, and I never did anything for his glory, because you know why? I even got to the point where I thought I was agnostic, even though I grew up in it, and there's an engineering mind in my background, which, you know, I'm a salesman if you can't tell, but there's that pragmatic thought that talked me into not believing. And I'm sure there's some of y'all out here right now that, man, that comes into your mind, and you're like, man, I don't believe. What is there to believe? Well, let me tell you something. There was times that I prayed, and it was, whether it be financial, and it was some of that situational prayer. You know what I'm talking about. It's like, you know, God, I need this. Well, let me go ahead and pray. Or, oh my goodness, I'm in this boat, and, you know, I'm out here fishing, been drinking all day, and the waves are getting high, so let me pray we don't sink so we can get back. Well, that's what I call situational prayer, and man, I was good at it. Did it work? So, hell, I made it back. So I guess it worked, you know. I'm like, well, that's good stuff. But it took going through all that, and then I got madder, you know. I had an older sister, and December 19th, 2014. I talked to my sister every day going into that day. I talked to her every day for months, and I didn't talk to her that morning. I called my mom. I said, hey, go by and check on Donnie. And, you know, long story short, she ended up in the hospital. And my brother and I sat in the hospital room. And I'll never forget as we're executing the document, because they said, man, she had bronchitis. She had hemorrhaged. And we have to go in and clamp a blood vessel. Because if we don't, she's either going to bleed out. So here's your options. But we got to have you sign this, because we're not going to be accountable, because it's tough. And we're kind of, you know, at this point, I don't think it hit either one of us, did it? No. And long story short, because I was given 10 minutes, but I think I'm going to go over. Are you all right with that? So they went in, did the surgery, and they clamped the wrong blood vessel and sent her to immediate stroke. And so we got to sit in a room for a week and just watch her with no nourishment, no nothing, and just watch her pass away. And I'll never forget the sun coming through that morning. It was Christmas Eve, not 2014. So here on Thanksgiving, I lose my dad. On Christmas Eve, so many years later, and so what did I do? Screw you, God. And do you know what? You don't love me. Don't. I said, I didn't believe it. I was pissed. I was even more pissed. And the years went on, and I had decisions made and what have you. And I found out I had this little girl, you know, in May of 2017. So at that point, I'll never forget as long as I live, and I know my brother won't either. I called my brother and I said, man, I've got a parachute here, but here's what's going on. It's this, you know, situation which I won't get into. If you want to know, call me. I'll tell you, but it's not the time or place. But I called him and I said, dude, I don't know what to do. You know, she said, hey, just leave us alone. You know, this shouldn't have happened, and just sign over your rights and this, that, and the other. And I'll never forget, I called Donnie and I said, oh, what would you do? And, you know, he's a very analytical fella, but in that moment, it knee-jerked out of him. He said, if there's even a chance that baby's yours, you sell a business, you do whatever you have to do. I lived in Dallas at the time. Man, living a life. Man, I bachelor, Dallas, made money, former NFL player. I'm on the board of the NFLPA in Dallas, Texas. And he said, whatever you do, no matter what it takes, he goes, there's one thing in this world that I'd never, ever give up and change a decision, and that's my children. He goes, and if that's the case of you, you come back, you fight. I'll do whatever I can to help you fight. So in that moment, I said, huh. I'm like, well, this is going to take a minute. So I obviously started moving the process. I moved to Dry Prong, Louisiana. And I mean, I'm like, I went from downtown Dallas, living in the finest condominium, and I moved to the biggest shithole. Lord forgive me. No offense to anybody who lives in Dry Prong, but I moved to this place, and I'm like, God, where have you took me? And I said, is this worth it? And the process went on, and it was like God had sit there, and he'd walked me through this desert of 30 plus years of anger and bitterness, and yet at the same time in the back of my head, I always knew what was right. Always knew. And that comes from the upbringing, and then all of a sudden, I'm blessed with full custody of this just gift that you have no idea, and a lot of y'all seen her because she's awesome. She is. She is gorgeous. She's charismatic, and she's come so far in the last 14 months. But people say, oh my God, Cleve, you saved her life. I said, no, she saved mine. Boy, I did a lot of good with these notes, didn't I? Let's go ahead and put them in my pocket. So, it comes at full circle, and there was a threat against us. And have you ever seen that movie Jumanji? So there's that part in Jumanji, especially the original one, where there's there's that sound, and everybody tries to get away from it. They try to avoid that calling, and they're like, oh, this isn't real. Let me go over here. But guess what's over there? The same stuff. And let's go over here. Well, it's the same stuff. Well, that's kind of the way I was at that point. I'm like, huh. And I said, well, I'm here, I'm listening. And this threat came, and for once in my life, it wasn't situational prayer. I walked up to Russ, and I said, I need to talk. And man, I broke down, and Presley was in daycare over here where she's at right now. And I said, I want, for once, I don't want money. I don't want this. I just want help and prayer for protection over my baby. And I said, if God has any time, give me some peace. Wasn't nothing else. That's all I wanted. And it was in that moment that he answered that prayer. And I think it's the first one that had been answered. And it was almost just, no, it wasn't almost. It was. There was a hand laid upon me, and it says, here you are, my son. Now you're ready. And my child came in there, and it was me and him had sat there for a few minutes. And if any of y'all ever had a 3-year-old daughter, they're a little squirmy. She's no different. And we sat there in prayer, and my sister-in-law, Christy, and Russ, and Presley are sitting there huddled up. She didn't move a muscle. She didn't utter a word. She received it. And I received it. So I don't know what my notes said. I don't know if that came out worth of dead gum, and I'm sorry for saying shit. But that's a whole lot of me being me. And, I look back, and, man, I stand, I've lost 60 pounds. I'm a slim, trim 345. And people joke about that. I'm like, well, when you start at 402, that'd be like you losing 5 pounds. But, that's like I told him. I said, the day if I get baptized, all I need is a shot glass. But, but you think about that and you say, man, he did all that for me. And going through all of that, coming back full circle, where's Jake Dordor? What's that gum, son? What are you doing? Man, I was warned about working with people like you, amateurs. But man, I think about that in this song. I go back to Daryl Griggs, and I kind of come full circle, and his son Mason, who his brother is my best friend, been my best friend since I was born. Mason was born with a hole in his heart, and Mason and my brother were best friends, and Andy and I were best friends. We lived, as a crow flies, a half a mile through the woods, and we were our closest neighbors. And we used to shoot firewalk before cell phones. Obviously, we're talking like early '80s, and we'd cheer each other on, and we'd shoot fireworks, and we'd clap, and everything was quiet because we were closest neighbor. But anyway, Mason wrote this song many years ago, and my cousin Andy and I were in Nashville at the same time. I went to the Super Bowl. Andy had 2 #1 hits, and we've come full circle. And Andy, this is for you. I know you helped Jake with the guitar, and I know that was a labor of love because Jake's like, he's sitting there going through it yesterday or day before yesterday, and he's like, man, what are these chords? And Andy's like, yeah, I made them up. And he teared them down, and we're sitting there going through it, and we've kind of rehearsed. Man, I'm not the singer in the family, Christy is, but I also have had a lot of knee surgeries. My knee hurts, and so this thing works. Man, it does. I can turn this sucker off. Just sit it down. But what I'm gonna say right here is, all right, Russ, don't get on to me. Hang on, let me sit down. I'm gonna tell you what, that 24-hour degree deodorant, man, they're full of it. Hey, hello now. So, I say all this to kind of come back full circle, and Russ and I have talked a lot about, I've ran from a calling, I've ran from every calling. I've half-assed my Christianity. I've not been the person that maybe I should have been at times, and I ain't gonna say I'm gonna sin again. But I'm here right now to tell you, you want to know more, and you want to know that what my number is 318-592-9151. You holler at me. All right, Will. Look out, Will. Way before I was born, the Lord had thought of me. Before I knew about heartache, my whole life he could see. Before I knew about him, he called me by my name. And he did all of that for someone like me. I used to think I was somebody when I played that old football. But he filled me with his sweet love, and in his eyes now I'm a star. Yeah, he loves me for what's inside. That's the way he'll always be. And he did all of that for someone like Cleve. Well, I don't really know if I could die for someone, but I know I couldn't stand there, watch those people kill my son. So maybe, Lord, it took some time, but now I finally see, yeah, someone just like mine. Yeah, just like you and me and Presley.